You're listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 189th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and alongside me, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here, and another exciting day of NFL football today. Kind of crazy. I think 3 overtime games in the early games. Looks like there may be a chance for 1 potential overtime game, but based on the score, probably not. It may be close down the stretch, but not necessarily an overtime game in the late games. But another exciting day and plenty to talk about.
Yeah, plenty to talk about.
And we don't have to talk about your Dolphins.
No, we don't have to talk about my Miami Dolphins.
Actually, we probably should address something.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a normal show in terms that we were going to go for a good 45, 50 minutes, I probably would talk about Miami firing Philbin, Miami firing defensive coordinator Kevin Coyle, them announcing that Dan Campbell, the tight end coach, was interim filling in. Today there was word that depending on what happens in New Orleans, Miami might look towards Sean Payton. Obviously, that's all a little bit early, just conjecture, but we don't even know what Dan Campbell's going to do with the team. But he's definitely brought a different attitude to South Florida.
Yeah, so they were running like bull in the ring.
In the first practice, he ran Oklahoma drill. If any familiar with football, you know what's going on there, and it's just something that a lot of teams have strayed away from, and especially the NFL, because they're a bunch of prima donnas who don't want to do anything and get their paycheck. So, it was kind of a wake-up call, I'm sure, for a lot of them down there, overpriced babies that reside in Miami at the moment. So,
not
bitter,
or
angry or anything.
Okay,
whatsoever.
So yeah. Other than that, not a whole lot to talk about with the Dolphins this week. But again, lots of exciting games today.
They're one of 4 teams that are off. The other ones being the Jets, who Miami got beat up by last week, and then also the Vikings and Panthers. So you have 2 strong NFC teams and an undefeated one in the Panthers not playing today. But a couple other undefeated teams are putting their pristine record on the line. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the couple games that are going on at the moment, and then the 2 remaining games left in Week 5. So now we are really, last week we were about a quarter of the way through. Now we can say we're almost a third of the way through. We're closing in on that mark. And it's a little bit of a surprise that we're here this week. The schedule kind of got changed. It's a really busy weekend.
It changed a couple times today.
It changed a bit today, and here we are anyways. But we weren't supposed to be on. We were supposed to be doing episode 3 of the Bulldog Hour, but that takes a lot more work, and it's a lot more time intensive, and just couldn't get it done this weekend. We won't have anything next week. My little girl, Haley, is getting baptized, so we're going to hang out with family and friends for that occasion.
And friends.
And then 2 weeks from now, we will finally do the third episode of the Bulldog Hour. So you won't actually hear from us on the Joe Mays and J-Raff show until the first Sunday in November, which I think actually is the first.
It is the first because the 31st is a Saturday.
Yes. So hang out with us on All Saints Day.
There you go.
We will talk NFL, which would be by then, I guess, NFL Week 8 will be ongoing, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
6, 7, yeah, I think NFL Week 8. So we'll actually be at basically the midway point the next time we're here to talk NFL action. But enough of looking into the future. Let's talk the present. And let's start on the Thursday night game, which word came out early on Thursday that everyone thought altered the face of the game. Andrew Luck, the number 1 overall pick in 2012 and the guy that has taken the Colts to the playoffs 3 straight seasons, to the AFC Championship game last year. He has had a tough start to the season and now missed his second consecutive game with a shoulder injury. So everyone was jumping, okay, the Colts, they're not going to, no chance. Matt Hasselbeck is in the hospital. He can't even play tonight.
He didn't even go to practice because the coaches had been anticipating that Luck was going to be able to go. So they had told him, don't worry about it. They had to schedule a special walkthrough on Thursday morning for Hasselbeck because he had been in the emergency room Monday night till 2 in the morning, and it just with some bacterial infection. They basically said he had dropped a ton of weight and just was being sapped, energy wise, and then he came out and played really well.
He played really well, yeah.
Especially in that backup role, but I felt like he did that the week before. I know his numbers weren't fantastic last week, and they were in that close game with Jacksonville. It wasn't a shootout. I almost called it a shootout, but
they won that in overtime.
Right, they won, and he won at Houston. So they won 2 divisional games with a backup quarterback. Hey, and actually, if you look back the last 3 weeks, so you include Luck's last game, they beat Tennessee in a close game. So they beat Tennessee,
they won
beat
3
Jacksonville,
games by a combined 12 points.
Right, beat Houston. So it's not pretty right now for Indianapolis, but they just swept their division, and you know what? They're going to be okay in that division because,
what else is going on?
Exactly.
No one else is really making any noise.
Houston's in trouble. They have no idea who their quarterback should be. It should be Brian Hoyer.
They have
no clue. They have no real solid defenders other than 2 defensive ends and a linebacker in Cushing. And I think Cushing is solid, but I think he's a little overrated. That might be because I don't really like him. But I like Watt, and I like Clowney because he can be fun to watch when he's healthy. But it's really they don't have any help on the back end. So when you're getting rid of the ball quick, it takes those guys out of the game.
Yeah, so the Colts got the win, 27-20. Houston we thought would be the challenger for the Colts. They just can't get anything going. I mean, you mentioned a little bit. They struggle on defense. They haven't settled on a quarterback. I think the seat that O'Brien sits on is getting a little hot. I think he'll be okay this year if he starts to turn it around.
I'll be honest. There was a point today when I turned off the Eagles game on the radio after Sam Bradford threw his second pick in the end zone and they were losing 7-0, that I was like, well, maybe Houston will get fired, or they'll fire O'Brien, and he can get hired by the Eagles, who have a high draft pick, and they draft Christian Hackenberg. I get Hackenberg and O'Brien on the Eagles next year. I don't think that's actually how things would play out, but the thought crossed my mind.
So, the
big win for Indianapolis, and Houston needs to right the ship.
Yeah, the
quickly.
Texans dropped to 1-4 now. You mentioned Hackenberg, and the only thing that I'll say, you were at the Penn State game yesterday.
Showed flashes of 2 years ago.
Well, and there was word, now maybe you didn't see this, that the Houston Texans staff and scouting department was on hand for the game yesterday.
I'll tell you what, that was a heck of a game for them to be there because
2 rushing touchdowns. He was airing it out.
First couple series he struggled with some decision-making too. But then, honestly, some of his incompletions later were drops. Well, actually, the first drive was on him. He held the ball too long, needs to get rid of it. Second drive, which did nothing, they need to get rid of, they needed to actually catch the ball. He hit 2 receivers in the hands, and they dropped them both. That's not on him. And then after that, I actually texted you from the game. It's amazing what happens when execution and play calling are both on. And they were for, I'd say, about 3/4 of that Penn State game. And it was fun to watch. Now, again, Indiana literally has a bottom 10 defense in Division I football. But Penn State racked up over 400 yards, exactly what you should do against it. Right.
Yep.
And played with a third and fourth string running back, and were able to run the ball. Hackenberg ran the ball effectively. The fans were eating that up. Yeah, but just he made a couple really good, nice throws. That throw to Deshaun Hamilton was a really nice throw for the touchdown. So he looked really good. It'll be interesting to see if they're bad enough. Well, if they're in a position to draft the quarterback really high in the first round, I don't know that.
Right, is O'Brien there to do it?
Right, is O'Brien there to do it? And also, is Hackenberg going to be a high first-round pick? But,
it would almost play into their favor that if they get to 500, Hackenberg could be there in the middle rounds because now we could see him shoot up because he tests, out of his mind at the combine and whatnot if he throws.
Interesting point by Ben Jones. I think it was Ben Jones yesterday. Penn State guy, writer, said something like he is becoming more and more intrigued by the Penn State-Michigan game at the end of the year because likely Hackenberg's last game at Beaver Stadium, but you're going to see him against Harbaugh's defense, which has 3 straight shutouts and basically a pro-style defense, Yeah. And they're like, it's a scout's dream in that scenario. Now, again, what they're going to be looking for very specific things. I don't know that Penn State's going to be up to the challenge as a team, but that's a different point. But Penn State was fun yesterday, handled their business, and hey, are at 5-1.
A month ago, we were saying, "Oh man, this is gonna be a long year." And now, not that they played anyone substantial, but they're sitting at 5-1, one win away from bowl eligibility.
I want to say very easily, but I think it's reasonable to think they could finish reasonable.
8-4, right?
I was going to say 3-3 the rest of the way, which would get them to 8-4. That's
fine with me.
Right, 8-4, and I'm okay with. And actually, I would have nailed my pick at the beginning of the season because that's what I said. 8-4.
Because I said 9-3 with the bowl.
To be honest, when they lost to Temple, I did waver a little bit.
1-11,
right.
1-12.
But Temple plays Notre Dame next week, and Temple's still undefeated.
I hate Notre Dame, so I want Temple to win that for multiple reasons now.
Absolutely, I want Temple, and it's in Philly. That's cool.
Wow, they got Notre Dame to come to Philly.
They probably play at Notre Dame 3 times.
17 times.
That's what Duquesne used to do. Duquesne used to and it wasn't with big schools like that. It was like Penn. Duquesne played 5 times at Penn for Penn to come to Duquesne once.
The Bill O'Brien's Houston Texans have the chance to right the ship because their next 3 games are against crappy teams in Jacksonville, Miami, and Tennessee. Then they have their bye week. So, actually, if they're really bad and end up being 1-7, O'Brien could get the boot in Week 9.
Right.
Just kind of like Joe Philbin just happened for Miami. Now, I think that Houston should have the chance to win all 3 of those games, and now you're 4-4 and kind of right where we really thought they'd be at the beginning of the year anyways.
Right. So I think they'll write it enough that O'Brien gets one more year, to kind of see where they're at. But we'll have to wait and see because you and I are generally more patient than NFL owners.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
On the other hand, it's not our billions of dollars, so it's easy to be patient.
And it's not our team either.
Right.
The Colts, meanwhile, hoping to have Luck back. They'll get a couple extra hours off. They don't play until next Sunday night, but it's against the Patriots.
Yeah, so good luck with that.
Rematch of the AFC Championship game, and I highly doubt New England will have any grudge or anything about the whole stuff. It's just water over or under the dam or bridge or whatever you want to say.
That's one where I don't care how much of a favorite New England is going into that game.
Take the over.
I'm taking the over, and I'm taking New England. I hope you're listening, our loyal listener from New England.
I made sure to point out to Rich and Bill.
And he responded. So our New England fan responded, so I know he at least knows there's a show. I'm all over that pick next week. We're
all over the pick this week, too.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
this week and next. Well, this week, not just that, but rooting interest wise, I'm even rooting for the Patriots this week. I know you can't really bring yourself to do that, but this week,
rooted for them in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, that's because we all have character flaws. But this year, this week, I really want them to win. So we'll see.
All right, so that's it for the Thursday night game.
Right.
Again, the Colts improved to 3-2 with a 27-20 win over the Texans. Not a couple games we're just going to run through quickly here. Buffalo rebounded barely.
By the way, the
edging
Bills were
Titans.
1-point favorites, and they won by 1 point. So push, house wins.
Vegas knows. So Bills scored late in the fourth quarter to edge the Titans 14-13. Buffalo rebounded from their loss last week. Tennessee coming off their bye couldn't get it done. St. Louis went through Green Bay, and finally, for the first time in nearly or over 3 years, Aaron Rodgers has thrown an interception at Lambeau.
And he had 3 turnovers today. I think a couple fumbles, but
didn't end up hurting Green Bay in the long run. They improved to, I believe, undefeated 5-0.
I was able to pick up the Packers defense in a couple fantasy leagues, because the defense I normally play is on a bye this week in Minnesota. A bunch of them.
Oh, it must be the Dolphins defense.
The Packers did really well.
Well, the Rams' offense isn't the only. Now, this might have changed over the last couple of weeks, but a week or two ago, after the Eagles had lost again, they were the 31st ranked offense. The only one that was worse was the Rams, quarterbacked by Nick Foles.
So I already mentioned Sam Bradford did not have a good start to the game today, but he played really well the second, third, and fourth quarter. Nick Foles is struggling, and he got signed to a big extension.
Right, and Bradford didn't.
So he looks. However, St. Louis has found someone in Todd Gurley.
Absolutely.
Back-to-back weeks, 150 yards.
Yep.
I
wanted Miami to get him. I wanted Miami to get him at 14. He went to pick 10. So
he looks like the real deal there. So maybe that will help them as they move through. So
now the Rams,
also, I mean, it's tough. You're playing the Packers.
Right.
That's a tough one. So.
Now St. Louis, after it, they upset a team that's supposed to be better than them in week 1. They come out and lay an egg against the terrible team that week 2. They play like crap again in week 3, but then they come back, beat the Arizona Cardinals. First Cardinals lost of the year last week, and then they come back and can't do much. At least it was a good team this time.
They've beat arguably 2 of the toughest 3 teams they've played, and lost to the 2 worst teams they played. Where you slot Pittsburgh and Seattle, and you could argue that that's not the case, but it's really because Ben Roethlisberger got hurt in that game and did not finish it. So, I would think that you could argue that at that point Pittsburgh wasn't as strong as Arizona, and by record, I guess they aren't. But, St. Louis needs to turn it around, or Jeff Fisher could be in trouble.
He could be, definitely. They have their bye next week before staying home at the Edward Jones Dome and taking on the Browns. Green Bay, meanwhile, hosts another home game against the Chargers before taking their bye. Following the bye week, they will go to Mile High to play the Broncos.
They're at Denver and then at Carolina the following week. So
Green Bay is where we expected them to be.
Right.
Rams, maybe a little underwhelming. Thought they might have another win or so. But they've showed they can hang with some of the big teams, but they can't keep playing down to their opponents.
Yep.
And probably one of the most surprising games of the day, the Browns scored 17 points in fourth quarter and overtime to come back and beat the Ravens 33-30. The Ravens
are averaging giving up like 27, 28 points a game.
The Ravens. This is not the Ravens defense of old for sure.
Josh McCown threw for over 400 yards.
Over 450 yards.
Right. So
that is,
if you were starting Josh McCown in fantasy today,
congratulations.
That one person, you did really well. But
so Cleveland got their second win of the year. They beat the Titans in week 2.
It's a big win.
And beat the Ravens here in week 5. So that's a big win for them. I still don't think that they're going to amount to much this year.
That's a huge loss for the Ravens,
too. They have a ton of time to go before their bye. They have to, unfortunately, host Denver next week. The Ravens, meanwhile, I know they're dealing with a lot of injuries, especially on offense, but they just look bad. They lost to the Broncos and Raiders to open the season, then choked one up to the Bengals in week 3. They finally were able to beat Pittsburgh last week on Thursday night without Roethlisberger, and now this week at home they can't hold on to a victory against the Browns.
Right.
Now Baltimore has to travel again, back-to-back games on the West Coast, and they've already said they're not staying out there.
To start the year, I was a little. I didn't pick the Ravens to make the playoffs, and then when I realized I didn't do that, I was like, I think they'll get one of those wild card spots. They've lost a number of games that I think at the end of the season, when you look back, they needed to win at least 1 or 2 of them, and one of those being today.
None of those losses were like blowout losses, but they lost by 6 to Denver, they lost by 4 to Oakland, they lost by 4 to Cincinnati, and they beat Pittsburgh by 3 and lost to Cleveland.
Cincinnati
by 3.
and Cleveland were at home. They've lost 2 divisional home games already to Cincinnati and to Cleveland.
Yeah, they don't have a home win.
Right, that's tough. So
yeah, so Baltimore, things not looking good for them. Let's talk a little bit about your team, and then we'll breeze through some of these other here.
Rough start, but they were moving the ball. It wasn't a rough start like normal, where they've been 3 and out, which I think was also huge because it allowed the defense to actually be able to play in the second half. The Saints' touchdown in the second half came literally as like the very end of the game, so that was kind of a throwaway. It was really like 39-10, and then the Eagles got it rolling. Ryan Matthews looked really good today, and he was like running possession. He was just running guys over, and he's not a real big guy, but they also got DeMarco Murray going. He didn't rush for over 100 yards, but his combined yards from scrimmage, receiving and rushing, was like 120-some yards.
He had 83 rushing.
And a touchdown. So he got it going. Ryan Matthews had it going. The defense played much better today. Today was a good day for the Eagles. This is more of what they, including me, expected kind of coming into it. Huge game next week for them. The Giants come to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And the Giants, we talked about this last week, and I still stand by it regardless of kind of what happens tonight. The Giants are the best team in the division right now. They could be 4-0. They should be 3-1. But that's a huge game because a divisional game is a 2-game swing. It could also potentially put the Eagles in first place in the division.
Depending on what else
as
happens.
Crazy as that is. And again, it's really hard to project, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Eagles stumbled too much at the beginning of the year here, but I do think they will turn around. They're still the favorite in terms of power index points, to win the division with like a 38% chance to win the division. I don't necessarily agree with that, but and that was before this week's games. It'll be huge for them if the Giants lost tonight. I don't think that'll happen. But that's a big game.
A couple weeks ago, this Monday night game looked like crap. Now it's looking pretty enticing, especially if the Giants win.
ESPN is pleased, especially if the Giants win.
Eagles in Philly, 8:30 next Monday night. That's huge.
But then it doesn't get any easier after that.
No, they have to go on the road to Carolina. They've actually played pretty well in Carolina, though.
Yeah.
So you win at least one of these, the fandom shouldn't be freaking out in the bye week. You lose both.
Hey, if you win both, then everybody's freaking out because they have 2 weeks to get ready for Dallas.
Right, yeah, exactly. And neither Romo or Bryant will be back in time for that game.
But if you look at after that, so after the bye, they have Dallas without Romo and Dez. They've got Miami. They've got Tampa. They've got Detroit. So all of a sudden, now again, this is getting ahead of ourselves because there's 2 games that they could easily lose before the bye.
But then they have 4
in a row that they
very
should
well
win.
Probably should win. The way they're playing right now, if they can keep it going and not do this Jekyll Hyde, two-faced stuff.
And then you've got the 5 at the end where I'd say they don't beat New England. Then you have toss-up with Buffalo, toss-up with Arizona because it's in Philly, even though Philly plays better on the road a lot of times. Then you have toss-up with Washington. I say toss-up, but they should win that.
The way I look at them is I look at New England loss, Arizona loss, Giants toss-up, Buffalo, Washington should be wins because I'm not high on Buffalo.
No, I can understand that, and we'll know more obviously by the time that comes. But So again, I said it last week. I think the Eagles are going to turn it around. I think they're going to come up short at the end because, like a lot of their games that they had so far, dug themselves too big of a hole. The fortunate part is the NFC East is not very good. I don't think there's a terrible team. There's not a team that's going to be drafting like 1 or 2.
No.
But there's not a team that's going to be drafting like
31.
Right, 28 or higher either. Now, maybe because of playoffs, but I don't necessarily see that either.
I don't see any NFC East team
at this point.
Honestly, I'm not even sure I'd say I can see even one in the NFC Championship game. I just don't think that they're going to do it.
There's, 2.5 months until we get there.
We've seen so much change in the first 5 weeks.
If
there's 12 more weeks.
Right. If the offensive line comes together in Philly, then, and they get the offense clicking, who knows? At the same time, if Dallas can weather the storm and then get Dez and Romo back, who knows,
Right.
Or can the Giants get things rolling? The
the Saints, the team that the Eagles beat up on,
They're in trouble.
39-17. They are in trouble. That's why I mentioned at the top of the show that Miami might be interested in Sean Payton. He might be shown the door. Drew Brees could honestly even end up being released after the season. New Orleans going to be in probably full rebuild mode.
I think Brees will be released after this season.
Next week, things don't get any easier as they have to host the undefeated Atlanta Falcons. It is the Thursday night game. So at the Superdome, 8:25, CBS NFL Network, this Thursday night. Falcons
the only
at
chance
Saints.
I give the Saints is because the Saints are at home.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, and this looks like an interesting game. I think there could be some action there for New Orleans. They need a win, and it's at home. Atlanta doesn't play well there. They had a scare this week.
Right.
So this could be an upset alert for
Right.
the Falcons. All right, a couple scores just to mention. We'll mention the Falcons. We'll say another overtime game. Atlanta came back and was able to beat the Redskins.
Looked really bad in the first half. Looked solid at the end of the game.
Yes, they were losing 7-3 at halftime, but the teams traded a lot of points in the fourth quarter. Falcons scored late to force overtime, and then they were able. Excuse me, the Redskins, right? The Redskins forced overtime.
The Redskins were able to drive down and kick a field goal as time expired. Force overtime,
but
yeah.
Atlanta scored a touchdown to seal it.
It kind of went. Period. I forget what happened exactly before it, but Kirk Cousins threw an out, and the wide receiver was not there, and the guy who had a key penalty called against him, defensive back,
Robert Lester?
number 23. I don't. Sorry, I don't know.
Trying to remember.
Picks it off, toes the sideline to stop himself from going out of bounds, and goes fairly uncontested. Like 60 or 65 yards right down the sideline for a touchdown, a walk-off touchdown. It was pretty cool.
The high-scoring game in Tampa Bay, in the state of Florida matchup, Jacksonville at Tampa Bay, They put up a combined 69 points. But the Buccaneers, Jameis Winston got the better of Blake Bortles, who had a huge game. Allen Robinson had 2 touchdowns sitting on my fantasy
And they were
bench.
up. They were the Jaguars were up. Buccaneers took the lead. Jaguars come back, take the lead, and then the Bucs finished it out in kind of like a rout. 7 points, but like the Buccaneers, I think were up 14 at one point late in the game. So, Jameis Winston looked. The Buccaneers offense finally got it going today. Jaguars offense got it going, and their defense wasn't there. That's frustrating. So, you can't really blame it on the young quarterback. I guess in this one, you put up 31 points, you have to win that game.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a defensive fault,
right
there. You can't give up 38 points to a rookie quarterback and expect to win. You're right. The Jaguars offense they played well.
I think it was the Buccaneers' first win at home in 11 attempts.
Wow, that is so
which is more than a season. So
that's so pathetic.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay will go on their bye next week before going to Washington the following week.
That's one of those games where I feel like they should pay us to watch. Like Tampa at Washington.
The Jaguars, meanwhile, like we mentioned, they will host Houston and Buffalo before going on their bye in Week 8. The last 2 early games to talk about both came down to the wire or went extra time. One of them saw a collapse. The other one saw a huge comeback, or I guess technically both comebacks, but I think it was more the Chiefs collapsing and getting robbed, whereas the Bengals stormed back against the Seahawks. Cincinnati scored 20 unanswered points, 17 in the fourth quarter, 3 in overtime to come back and beat
the Seahawks. So
the Seahawks,
knowing they have to pass, and they were able to.
How's that Legion of Boom doing?
I know it doesn't matter until he wins a playoff game, but Andy Dalton looks better than he has at any point in his career. I'm serious. Like even when he's put up numbers early on, it's always been one guy. He's been throwing to AJ Green, and gets a bunch of yards. Eifert is for real. Maybe the second best tight end in football right now, only behind Gronk, who's kind of like his own category. So I'd put him right up there. But Andy Dalton, and they got the running game going today against Seattle. They struggled early, but in the second half they got it going. Giovanni Bernard and is it Jeremy Hill?
Yeah.
Jeremy Hill, they got it going. They look good.
They have a chance to go into the bye undefeated. Now, it's I don't want to call it a trap game, but it's a tough game because playing in Buffalo is hard.
Yeah.
The Bills pull out all the stops at home, and so Cincinnati has to go there next week. But
that's an interesting game.
Get the win. And none of their wins have really been against pushovers. You know, some would say maybe the Raiders, but Oakland's much better this year than they've been in years past. But they beat the Chargers, they beat the Ravens, and I don't care that the Ravens only have one win. It's a rivalry game. It's always
and
contested.
it was a division game on the road. That's a big win.
Beat the Chiefs. Now they beat the Seahawks, the two-time defending NFC champs. They have a chance to go in the bye 6-0. And they're definitely one of. If they're not the best team in the league, they're definitely.
And then they get to play another conference game coming out of the bye
on the road against an injured quarterback.
But you get a bye going into that. That's huge.
2 weeks to prepare for Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The Seahawks, meanwhile, after that collapse, they have 3 more games before their bye. They get to host the undefeated Panthers. That'll be an interesting game.
Panthers
right there.
are coming out of a bye, though, I believe.
They
don't
are.
Play this week.
Rematch of NFC playoff game last year.
Yeah.
Then they have to travel to San Francisco. That used to be a huge game, but with the 49ers down, not so much.
Right. That's a huge game for Carolina. Not to interrupt real quick, but actually, I guess to interrupt real quick. That's a huge kind of like Carolina. Yeah. Are you for real?
Are you
kind
for
of
real?
Game.
Are you for real? Because even though the Seahawks are 2-3, people still I think they were 2-3 last year at this point.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. So that's that. I alluded to the Bears in Kansas City. Chiefs always play good at home. Well, the Bears scored 12 in the fourth, but you said that there was a call.
It to me, it seemed very questionable. It seemed like the defensive back was looking back, like with his back to the receiver, and the receiver climbed over him, and they called defensive pass interference. They didn't give a good replay. I could be wrong. It looked like the wrong call. And then the Bears scored a touchdown to take the lead.
Bigger news for the Chiefs besides losing again.
Yes.
I mean, the Chiefs.
We disappointment
thought,
this year.
Yeah, we thought that they'd be a little bit better. They're not showing it right now in terms of wins and losses. But the biggest takeaway, and unfortunately, it's a significant injury, is to their running back Jamal Charles, expected to have torn his ACL.
Yeah,
he will be out for at least.
It
all
looked
of this
like
season.
he got into a pile, but actually, when they slowed down the replay on red zone, you could see he kind of collapsed into the line in the pile. Like it was really a non-contact injury, which is a dreaded, dreaded term in all sports. Non-contact leg injury usually is not good.
Yeah. Kansas City, meanwhile, they dropped to 1-4. They've got 3 weeks as well before their bye. They have to go to Minnesota before hosting Pittsburgh and
all of
Detroit.
a sudden, that 27-20 win on the road at Houston doesn't look all that great. Yeah.
So no marquee victory and a lot of bad losses for the Chiefs. The Bears, pull up where they're going next week. The Bears will be on their. Oh, excuse me. No, they go to Detroit before their bye, and
they
Detroit
need to win that one. They are bad.
If one of those teams has to get a win there. I know Chicago, now has 2, but
Chicago could win that and get the 3-3 going into their bye and maybe turn things around.
That's a good rebound for them.
Yeah, that would be huge.
All right, the 2 games left to play tonight. We're going to see San Francisco at the Giants. We mentioned that Giants win. It sets up a huge game with the Eagles next week on Monday Night Football. And then the Monday night game this week is Pittsburgh in San Diego. Both of those teams desperate for a win. The Chargers have a couple losses that they probably shouldn't have. But with the Chiefs struggling, but the Raiders charging, San Diego, if they want to keep pace with the Broncos, they need to get this win.
Yeah. That's a big game for 2-2 teams. Early on, that's a huge game. Steelers need to keep pace with the Bengals, like you said, and the Chargers looks like are going to need to keep pace with the Broncos. So that's going to be tough. The loser there is a few games behind, like 3 games behind their division leader, which is not a position you necessarily want to be in because I don't think the Steelers have played the Bengals yet. But I don't know if the Chargers have played the Broncos yet either.
They have not. I don't
right.
believe.
So, but 3 games behind, that's a tough situation to be in when you're 3 games behind after 5 games.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. So Pittsburgh in San Diego tonight. They have to host Arizona next week.
Yeah. So all the more reason they need to win this week.
They need this win. Yeah. The 3 late games going on right now as we speak. 2 of them are pretty much in hand. And it was told to me both at first by my aunt and then confirmed by my uncle that Rich is indeed listening to the show whilst watching the Patriots beat up on the Cowboys. And let's see if I have his exact term
Rich,
here.
then it sounds like we're both having a good time.
Yeah, let me see.
That is actually fairly rare, but I feel like there have been a few times this fall where, like through Facebook comments and things like that, I've said things like, Rich, I know we always don't agree on things, but here, I feel like over the last couple months, as crazy as that is, there have been some things that we agree on.
Maybe you guys should hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Or maybe we should just, keep winning fantasy football championships. I don't know.
Okay, all right. His exact quotes were, "I'm watching and the Cowboys are toast. Bring on the Colts." I think he's looking forward to that one.
I think everyone north and east of New York City is going to be fixed in on that one.
And everyone south and west is going to be cheering for the Colts.
Just as it should be.
The Patriots are beating the Cowboys in Dallas 27-6. It was tight at the beginning. The Cowboys were getting the best of the Patriots' offensive line, but in the second quarter, New England started getting it going. Now they just got the ball back with under 7 minutes.
Just for fun, think about what that would be like to be an offensive lineman with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick in that locker room at halftime when you've given up 5 sacks.
Not a good place to be. Not a good place to be.
I don't know if they have the same 5 that came out. They might be in a dumpster somewhere.
Yeah. Piggybacking on that game before we talk about the final 2, my dad says right now the only teams he can cheer are Wilson and Penn State and his fantasy team, he points out, because all the injuries the Cowboys have, the 2 and 3, they're done.
No.
He thinks they're done at 2 and 3.
They're not done.
Because of how crappy the NFC East is.
Right. Losing to the Patriots is not, what pushes you over the edge. It's kind of like
losing to the Redskins, right?
Maryland firing Randy Edsall because he lost to Ohio State, but after you lose to Ohio State, really? Is that what pushed you over the edge?
Yeah, why didn't you do this before? Okay, the other game, one that's completely out of hand, is the Cardinals-Lions in Detroit. Detroit's going to drop to 0-5, where Arizona will rebound from their loss last week to the Rams. They'll improve to 4-1, spearheaded by 28 points in the second quarter. Arizona leads Detroit 42-10 with 4 minutes to play.
Of note in that, Matthew Stafford was benched.
For Dan Orlovsky. He did not go out injured. He got benched.
That didn't really work out for him either.
We thought the Lions would be the third-place team in the NFC North. We might have given them too much credit.
Yeah, they've taken a huge step back.
Yeah, they look bad. And the other game is actually the only one that's within 1 or 2 scores now. Denver's pushed their lead over Oakland to 16-7. There's under 4 minutes to play. Oakland does have the ball, but
Broncos continue to not look pretty, but they're winning, and their defense is good. Their defense is good.
It's better than I expected, but their offense is probably worse than I expected.
I agree. Listening to the game last week on the radio as I was driving a little bit, the Denver announcers, it was interesting hearing. They're like, defense travels, and that's true. There's some truth to that. And you have to think that if the defense can win them some games that typically they may not have been able to win in the past, that which isn't a lot. There weren't a lot of games that they weren't winning, but that they can the offense will come around, as they continue to evolve and instill some of the Kubiak blocking schemes for the running backs, which honestly, it's got to be Ronnie Hillman at some point, right? You can't keep going with C.J. Anderson and let him keep going.
It seems like forever ago that Noshawn Marino was tearing it up in that system.
Yeah, but someone's going to step in, and the zone blocking will get there. I feel like there's a team every year where they go to zone blocking, like the Kubiak style of blocking, and the first part of the season they can't get it going. And then once they do, once those linemen start hitting their steps together, you start being able to fill anyone in there. So I think the offense will come around. Maybe not be the the fanciest high flying offenses that everyone's accustomed to from Peyton Manning, but if they can put up 20-some points, their defense against a lot of teams isn't going to give up 20-some points. So it's a different way, but maybe that's the different they need. Who knows? So
yeah, who knows for
we'll
sure.
Wait and see.
So that is the NFL Week 5. Again, 2 games left to play, 3 ongoing, and you win for your Eagles this week. Dolphins on a bye. Yeah. Patriots beating the Cowboys, kind of covering Baltimore lost. Giants play tonight, covering the teams that are most interested to our listeners. And unfortunately, like I said, we won't be back to talk NFL for another 3 weeks.
We'll get a little bit more clear picture.
Yeah, definitely. We'll probably start talking about who's the division winners possibly, who's going to be the wild cards.
Some more coaching decisions that have been made by then.
I'll be interested to see how many undefeateds we have left, because right now you have Carolina, New England, Denver, Cincinnati, and Atlanta, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, and Green Bay.
That's a lot.
You got 6 undefeated through 5 weeks. 6 undefeated teams. So most of them will start to fall, but like we said a couple weeks ago, New England looks unbeatable, and with the schedule that they have,
right.
I don't know what else to add. I mean, I don't want to see it.
I don't see Indy knocking them off next week.
At the beginning of the year, you would expect that would probably
have been a marquee game.
Right.
It'll still be a marquee game, but I see New England routing them.
Yeah, I do.
And
too.
honestly, with the chip on the shoulder kind of mentality that they just thrive off of in New England, even if the Colts were, had it going, I'm not sure it would have been any different. But should be interesting to kind of see how it plays out over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Any shout-outs for you?
Not off the top of my head, no. Sorry.
Congratulations to Wilson football team for
yes.
They got the win last week to tie the all-time mark for consecutive league victories set by Manhattan Central from 99 to 2006. Wilson edged Hempfield in a brutal battle in Landisville. They came out on top 15-9. That win gave them 53 straight Lancaster-Lebanon Section 1 victories, the new record that they started at the end of the 2007 season. Their last loss was to Manheim Township on October 26, 2007, and I think it was 27-6 or 26-7 at Manheim Township. Coincidentally, should Wilson win this week for 54, they'll try to get 55 back at Manheim Township 8 years almost to the day.
Rebound. Lost to Central Dauphin week 1, but I don't think they've lost.
No,
since.
they've rattled off 5 straight wins, and match Wilson's 5-1 record, and we'll see. That's the biggest game left on Wilson's schedule is 2 weeks at Manheim Township.
Yep. So
they as long they don't stumble this week. They beat the Buckskins from Conestoga Valley,
who are much improved,
much better than last year. They get to 6-1. If they beat Manheim Township in week 7, that all but seals a 8th consecutive Lancaster-Lebanon League title as well.
That's insane.
So, congratulations to Coach Toms and the Bulldogs. And we'll be talking about them in 2 weeks on the Bulldog Hour. And then in 3 weeks, we'll be back with episode 190 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. We're closing in on that 200. Justin and I are going to start working on the behind-the-scenes stuff. If all goes as planned, on Sunday, February 21st, will be not only episode 200, but literally 5 years and 1 day since we did our first ever show. So we're going to celebrate 5 years and 200 episodes on the same day. If we can work something out to do kind of something like we did for episode 100 where we were at the church with Chad Henney, I'd love to do it. There's some ideas in my head, and we can getting help from my dad, and Justin and I are going to start working on some things. See if we can
start laying some stuff out.
Start
see if we can
get some local names and some people to help contribute, whether it's pre-taped and we play it, or if we actually get to go somewhere and do a live show again. We'll keep everyone involved with that, but the date should be Sunday, February 21st. All right, well, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. That wraps up the 189th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday evening at 6:30 for our Take on Sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.